Adam, shall I show you the tree of immortality and possession that does not fade away?
In the 7th century AD, Prophet Muhammad was born in Mecca, where the Kaaba is located. Sadly, his father, Abdullah, passed away while Muhammad was still in the womb. His grandfather Abdul Muttalib was the esteemed leader of Mecca and even possessed the keys to the Kaaba. The Kaaba, which is the oldest or first house of worship in the world, existed in Mecca before Muhammad, right from the beginning. It was originally constructed by Prophet Adam. The history of the Kaaba took a dramatic turn when, during the time of Prophet Noah, the flood temporarily made it disappear. However, according to God's plan, the ruins were found millennia later by Prophet Abraham, who, on God's command, along with his son Ismail, rebuilt the Kaaba in the same location, laying the foundation for the city of Mecca. Over time, however, the teachings of Abraham and the true significance of the Kaaba were forgotten. The people of Mecca turned to idolatry, and the once radiant meaning of the sanctuary faded amid all the stone and wooden idols. Nevertheless, the Kaaba remained a silent witness to time, undergoing external changes, sometimes completely rebuilt, sometimes carefully renovated. Yet, since the beginning, it stood at the same sacred spot, an unwavering constant amidst change. Meanwhile, other prophets such as Joseph, Moses, and Jesus appeared in various lands and communities to convey the messages of Almighty God to the people. However, there were always those who resisted these messages. The teachings of Jesus and his public actions also angered both the religious leaders of his time and the Roman authorities, to the extent that an arrest was ordered.
Find and arrest him!
Yes!
As if that were not enough, Judas, one of Jesus' companions, betrayed him and disclosed his whereabouts.
I know where Jesus is. Follow me.
Eventually, Jesus was arrested by a group of soldiers and followers of the religious leaders. Jesus was hastily condemned, and the plan was to crucify him.
Crucify him!
As crucifixion was a common form of execution at that time. However, the Almighty God, free from space and time, independent of the familiar physical laws and the limits of any dimensions, had a unique plan. In the midst of this turmoil and chaos, as events unfolded, the Almighty God performed a miracle of epic proportions that would redirect the course of history entirely. The appearance of Jesus was given to another person, and the true Jesus was lifted up into heaven by the Almighty God, or in today's terms, beyond space and time, our dimension, and all known physical laws. It is plausible that the man who was nailed to the cross instead of Jesus was actually Judas, the one who had betrayed Jesus. This divine miracle led to a case of mistaken identity and just retribution for his betrayal. Contrary to widespread belief, Jesus was not crucified. Instead, a traitor was crucified. A unique destiny was foreseen for Jesus. He was to exist until his return to the world in an unknown place of another dimension. This remarkable story laid the foundation for the longing for his return, which continues to this day. 600 years after these extraordinary and fascinating events in Jerusalem, Muhammad entered the stage of world history in Mecca. Both Muhammad and Jesus, along with all other prophets, essentially belong to a specific lineage. Starting from Adam and Eve, the descendant of Prophet Abraham diverged through his two sons, Ismail and Isaac, reaching Jesus and Muhammad, the penultimate and final prophets. All prophets manifested various miracles. For instance, Prophet David could soften iron with his bare hands, Prophet Moses parted the sea, and Jesus spoke as an infant and raised the dead. Prophet Muhammad also displayed various miracles. However, the miracles began even before his birth, as something unusual occurred in Mecca a few months before he was born. Mecca was then a thriving trade city dominated by merchants whose wealth was multiplied by a unique privilege. In Mecca, the idols had their homeland. Every year, during the time of the Great Market, the priests of the desert brought their idols and divine images under the protection of the Kaaba. Inside and around the Kaaba, hundreds of idols stood, worshipped by the people. The religion that Abraham had once taught at this place had long been forgotten. The Kaaba, once built in the name of the one and only God, had become nothing more than a resting place for stone and wooden sculptures. Nevertheless, it was special, unique, and coveted. The history of the Kaaba and its connection to prophets like Adam, Noah, and Abraham made it a magical place that has always fascinated people. At that time, the viceroy Abraha al-Ashram of the Aksumite Empire ruled in Yemen, and the fame of the Kaaba and Mecca was a thorn in his side. He desired to be the most powerful and richest man on the Arabian Peninsula, and therefore decided to build a much larger and more magnificent place of worship, hoping that people would then pilgrimage to Yemen instead of Mecca. However, this plan was not successful. People continued their pilgrimages to Mecca. The sanctity of this holy place, made from simple and natural stones, was too beloved for them to be swayed by a golden temple elsewhere. Abraha al-Ashram was displeased with this failure. He resolved to conquer Mecca and destroy the Kaaba, forcing people to seek a new sacred place. He assembled a strong army and acquired elephants from India for his soldiers to ride on. An army with elephants was considered invincible at that time. This news caused great unrest among the people of Mecca. A battle against the overpowering Yemeni armies seemed futile. The people of Mecca decided to abandon the Kaaba to its fate and fled to the surrounding mountains and hills. The mighty army of elephants, 60,000 strong, marched relentlessly towards Mecca. However, suddenly, something inexplicable, something extraordinary happened. Right before the city gates, the majestic elephants refused to enter. Desperately, attempts were made to force them towards the Kaaba with ropes and blows, but their stubbornness threw the army into disarray and brought chaos upon the warriors. And as if that weren't enough, on the horizon, a gigantic swarm of birds appeared, their dimensions seeming to engulf the entire sky. An eerie aura settled over the battlefield as the first phase of ominous punishment began. The elephants and horses panicked, their thundering hooves leaving devastating traces on the ground as they trampled the soldiers in their flight. It was a scene of chaos rarely found in history. But that was not the end of the horror. The second phase of the cruel punishment revealed itself as the birds flew over the army. Each bird carried stones in its beak and claws. Like messengers of doom, they flew over the army, raining deadly stones on the unsuspecting warriors. In this apocalyptic moment, the warriors were fatally wounded, and their cries filled the air. The invincible army of elephants, consisting of 60,000 warriors, was defeated without human resistance, and the Kaaba and Mecca were saved.